Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Bell with, let me give you a new name. It's Innovate Hampton Roads. And our organization has been the Hampton Roads Technology Council back from the 90s. And then we did a DBA, Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative, for several years. And along the way, within the past couple of years, we started collaborating with Startware. And as a result of that, we work together in many ways. Alan Hagerman is on our board. I don't see Nancy Gurdon, but she is also on our new board. But we decided to start collaborating, and collaboration went very, very well, to the extent that we decided to merge. So effective in short order, we'll be signing the documents, and we'll be Innovate Hampton Roads going forward. And it's an exciting thing for our region. So we'll continue to bring the legacy programs that Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative had, as well as that of Startwheel and other organizations. Hi, Jeff. We're going to turn your video off. Okay, buddy?
No worries.
All right, sir. There we are. So this is, well, I don't know, what is this, the 30th Tech Tuesday session, which was spawned out of, like so many other things, COVID, some of the other programs that popped up for to continue business. And so we've done very, very well with that. Lots of people have participated. We record, we post, we share. It's so it's all good information. This series has been historically sponsored by Cox. They're a great regional partner. And so we thank them very much. I don't think we have anybody from Cox on board, but our thanks go out to them as well. In addition to that, our thanks go out to our speaker today, Ms. Katie Craig from G2Ops. Katie is the staff security engineer for that organization, and I've been familiar with their organization for many years. I met them years and years ago, and they're just a top shelf organization. So Katie's going to spend the next hour telling us about what's going on with cyber. It's always a hot topic. It's always a hot topic. Just when you think that that you've got it licked, something else comes up. And you know, I remember the story, not to bore you, but I was able to, privileged to work for Apple Computer many years ago, and directly in many cases with Steve Jobs. And we were talking about cybersecurity back then, even on the Mac platform. And I remember his response. He says, Dan, you know, you can always, you know, put up a wall, and that'll block them, and then they'll find their way around the wall, and or a new wall or whatever. So it's this was back in the 80s. He had that vision, and it was correct then, and it's still correct now. And so I hope that that our next several minutes with Katie will help us understand what some of the challenges have been of late. I can also tell you, when was that, last year, that the big hack came in, with a lot of small businesses being hacked. My son-in-law's business in Wisconsin was one of them. So that was a horrendous situation, and I'm sure that there's been significant advancement and improvements in the industry since then to hopefully stem the tide a little bit. But enough from me, and enough about some of the observations that I have. There's a lot of new stuff to hear about. And let me turn the whole show over to Katie. Katie, thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Would it be possible for you to turn my video back on?
Well, yes. It is off?
Yes.
How did that happen? Okay.
When you turned off video earlier, it turned off all of ours.
Oh.
Okay, I just want everybody to see me. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining. Like Dan says, I'm staff security engineer at G2Ops. I've been in cybersecurity for several decades now. Like Dan says, it goes back all the way to the 80s. And so I was told that this is a hot topic, and we're interested in knowing what's been going on recently. As part of one of my hobbies, I contribute to a daily cybersecurity and open source news podcast called It's 505. And when I was asked to come talk with you guys today, I thought, why don't I just take a look back at the last 6 months worth of episodes and see what's been trending? And so that's what, I'm going to share with you today. So if you give me a second, I'll try to share my screen. Can you let me know if you can see that?
Looks good, Katie.
Okay, now let me make sure I can control this thing. I appreciate you guys bearing with me.
And look at you, AKA Innovate Hampton Roads. What's that all about?
Did I go back too soon?
No, you did great. You did just great.
Okay, so like I said, if you can see the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the trends that I've seen, and basically to tip my hand, it's AI, it's TikTok, and it's China. And so we'll have plenty of opportunity to kind of dive into those topics. But basically, I'm going to highlight some of the common topics that I covered over the year or over the past 6 months and dive deeper into the subjects of TikTok, AI, and China. But, I'm hoping that with our Q&A and with the presentation, I'll be able to provide you with some valuable insights that can get you better prepared so you're at least aware of what's going on in the cyberspace realm, in the cyberspace domain, because we're all so connected and networked. It's not just at work anymore, it's at our homes, it's in the palms of our hands on our smartphones. And believe it or not, there's a bunch of bad apps, lurking in the Google Play and Apple App Store. So it's important to be aware of these threats and the trends in cyber, and we'll get into that. Please post your questions in chat. Dan will be guarding for those, and we'll pipe up if a good one comes in. And we'll also be having a dedicated Q&A session at the end if you just want to hold your questions until the end. So with that, what happened? Okay. Okay, threats are on the rise. Hackers are becoming much more sophisticated. It's funny now, about 12, 13 years ago was the first time I saw an APT threat report. It came out from Mandiant, and back then it was APT1. It was the first time any security organization took a look at an advanced persistent threat backed by a nation state where that was their day job, just penetrate into other networks. You fast forward to today, and there's just hundreds of APTs out there, not just China, but also North Korea, Iran. They're coming from all over the place, Russia. And so when you think about all the putter pandas and fancy bears and just all the APTs that are out there, it's no surprise that CISA is adding to its known exploited vulnerability lists almost weekly, sometimes daily. New known vulnerabilities being exploited in the wild, and it's happening more and more frequently. And the hackers are becoming more and more bold, as if everybody knows we're all in each other's networks, so why even hide it anymore? And these themes, of where the persistent threat is starting to care less about being discovered or us knowing that they're in our networks, it just kind of highlights the critical challenges and risks that we're all being faced with, and our organizations and even our country in this digital age. So TikTok, when I looked back on all the episodes that I did over the past 6 months, it seems like I was reporting on TikTok quite frequently. During the pandemic, TikTok came on the scene and just exploded in popularity. I don't know if anybody on the line has ever used TikTok, and I will admit I did during the pandemic. I did not contribute content, but I consumed almost all the TikTok content I could get my hands on. It was so engaging and so addicting. And that really is the danger of TikTok. The algorithm is so mysterious, and in some ways it's more addicting than heroin or some opiate. And some security folks have called TikTok a weapon of mass distraction, that it, forget about the data collection and the things that national security is worried about. As parents, as people, as Americans, if this app from another country is distracting our youth to the point to where, when surveyed,
I
American,
I did. I think I got all that. I made some notes. I mean, she sounds like a wonderful doctor. Really, it's great.
Hey, somebody,
Yeah.
somebody has their microphone on. Can you check your microphone, or let's see?
It's
I
Nancy.
got
She
you.
just joined.
I got you. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So, when surveyed, American youngsters, when asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? American youngsters are saying influencer, where Chinese youngsters are saying astronaut. And I don't know about you, but I don't want our kids aspiring to grow up to be a TikTok influencer. I would rather that they want to grow up to be astronauts as well. And so
That's
when you think,
that's a fascinating comment, by the way. Fascinating.
it's, yeah. And the other thing that's interesting is the Chinese have their own TikTok. It's called Douyin, but they have such restrictions on how their youth are able to view the content on Douyin. Like they're regulated by the app that they cannot view it for more than 45 or 90 minutes, something like that. And their algorithms are screened to where they can't see anybody bussing or licking toilets, because they don't want their kids growing up seeing that kind of thing. And so if they know that it's dangerous for their own youth, we should follow their example and be very cautious when allowing our youth to consume so much of this social media platform. Now, the national security concern comes in the fact that, yes, like Facebook, like Instagram, like Pinterest, and all the other platforms out there, TikTok is collecting all the data. I mean, how long you linger on a video, where your eyes go on a video, do you scroll, do you go back, do you rewatch? It's capturing everything. And the concern here is, okay, Facebook does it, Instagram does it. Well, guess what? Facebook and Instagram are both owned by Meta, which is an American company. And so the data is held in American control. It's in American sovereign country, whereas TikTok and the other apps are owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And regardless of whether TikTok wants to sue Montana for banning them, which they did. TikTok is suing Montana for banning TikTok on Montana devices, saying that they're violating their First Amendment right. Well, they're from China. I don't know if the American Bill of Rights applies to Chinese businesses, but some Americans are trying to make that case. The thing to be cognizant of is that the Chinese economic and military and political goals are not necessarily aligned with our economic and political goals. And as a matter of fact, because of their system of politics and their methods of governing, it's kind of opposed to a free and democratic society. So because we know China has been trying for decades to continue to grow its might, both militarily and politically, we don't want them getting all this data. We want to make it hard for them to collect all this data. And yet they're getting it in troves and troves and troves via apps like TikTok. So for that reason, you're seeing more and more. The Federal Register just published last week, government ban on TikTok on all ByteDance applications, TikTok successors, and all the apps made by ByteDance. Now, are not allowed on federal devices. And for members of the DIB like G2Ops, if you're a defense contractor and you connect to the controlled unclassified network, then the contractor's devices are also prohibited from having ByteDance apps. So no TikTok on contractor devices either. Okay, so the other topic that I seem to have been covering, oh my goodness, since November of last year when ChatGPT was introduced, seems to be AI and all the generative pre-trained transformer apps that are just kind of flooding the scene. And I just want to take this moment to apologize for my slides. I'm not a slide person, and even with ChatGPT's help, this is the best that I can do. So I'm just trying to speak kind of from memory about the stories that I covered over the past 6 months. Artificial intelligence, we've heard a lot of hyperbolic stories. Some folks are screaming that the end is nigh and the world is about to implode and Skynet's about to be real. And others are saying, you know, let's not motivate through fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Let's be pragmatic and realistic about this, and let's look objectively at what is going on with artificial intelligence. Now, I am not a data scientist, and I am not an AI expert, so I just have opinions. But I know that I don't know what I don't know, and so at some point you do have to trust experts that experts that you find trustworthy. But here's what's being said on both sides. Folks think that artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence, which is not what we're seeing right now. This generative pre-trained transformer is not artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence is more like how we as humans think, where we can think about abstractions and reason in second and third and fifth order effects. This is not what ChatGPT and these other GPTs are doing. All they are really large language models that are able to accurately predict what the next word should be in a sequence of words. Now, to be sure, these AI models are just astounding. It's amazing just how quickly they're evolving and how phenomenally the capabilities are changing. It seemed like in November and December, it was all text input. And then overnight, there was more GPTs spawning. And so now we have Chat GPT, we've got perplexity.ai, u.com is out there. Google's got Bard, it's still in beta, but everybody, it seems, has a GPT now. I reported on a story where a TikTok influencer named Karen Margaret or something like that. She made a Chat GPT app called Karen AI. And that GPT app went off the rails in like under a day or two, where it was unpredictable how the GPT was going to respond. And even though Karen Marguerite had no intention of her Chat GPT avatar getting spicy in conversations with fans, that's what happened. And so she had to take it down because she was surprised by what her avatar was saying. So we've been seeing a lot of these new apps, and because of the unpredictability, because of how difficult it is to constrain and control, some people are calling for a 6-month moratorium, for example. A lot of heads and CEOs of the AI companies, including Sam Altman from OpenAI, signed this, this open letter. Let's take a break. Let's, put a halt on new developments. Let's study what we have so far for 6 months. Well, that's all fine and good, but the other side of the coin, the folks on the other side of the argument are like, it's just a large language model. We can't afford to stop now. Our adversaries are not stopping. They don't care about, and so you can kind of see how both sides have valid points. Part of me is not entirely sure that we should be racing headlong. But again, I want to preface that with that is just my opinion. John Sherman, the DoD CIO, has been unequivocal. He has gone on record, and you can see him all over LinkedIn saying, we're not taking a knee on AI because the Chinese aren't. And so I think when it comes to artificial intelligence, what's important for us lay people to know is that ChatGPT and generative pre-trained transformer, the AI that we're experiencing today is not Skynet, it's not artificial general intelligence, and it's a long way from that. Right now, the AI capabilities we're seeing are still coming down to what comes next in this string of words, and the advancements we've been seeing with multimodal inputs where you can put in a picture or you can put in a piece of music and it's able to take those inputs. It's still going back to the large language models and outputting what it thinks based on prediction. A human would expect the output to be. So it's still nowhere near as close to generalized intelligence, like we've seen in some of the horror films. So I mentioned earlier when I was talking about TikTok, about APTs and how long they've been honing their craft. I don't want to misinform and give the impression that no other nations are doing that. You can be sure that we are doing that as well. We have a number of cyber defenders. We have a cyber army ourselves. But it is important to know as citizens that for at least, well, I know going back to 2012 when I first read like the IP Commission report, that China has been planning this for decades to raise its status, to raise its ability and capability on the world stage, become a blue water, to have a blue water navy, to have hypersonic missiles, to dominate in industries like film and entertainment. They just want to rule economically. They want to control sea lanes near their territory. They're pushing every boundary, and it's been part of their long-term plan going back decades. I just started tracking it back in 2012 or 2013 when the IP Commission published its report and said it's part of China's long-term economic growth plan to steal intellectual property from the United States and other Western nations and just get their hands on as much as they can to accelerate being able to go to market. Now, if you think about the second and third order effects of a country just stealing all the other intellectual property it can get its hands on, yes, they can probably copy the designs. Yes, they can get those products out onto their giant market. And yes, they can monetize it probably far better than the original developers can when they are allowed to come into the Chinese markets. All of that has been part of their grand plan to improve their military might, improve their economic stance. They want to be the #1 country in the world. And the problem with that is they're not democratic and they have a very abysmal record on human rights. And it's known that the communist ruling party, places pressure on other state organizations, private organizations to share information with the Chinese Communist Party. A recent report, TikTok, former TikTok employee spilled the beans that yes, they were spying on citizens in Hong Kong, dissidents and journalists that were maybe putting forth stories that were not so complimentary for the ruling party, spying on those people. And so that's what we're worried about. If we're consuming all this TikTok data, what's to stop ByteDance from taking it and just sending it over to the Communist Party? So that's the reason that China and its political aims should give us all pause. They're flooding our markets with all this inexpensive goods and merchandise, and from weapon systems like the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter to aircraft carriers, all the way down to Hollywood movie scripts, wedding dress designs, you name it, designer bags, they will counterfeit it and sell it and reap the benefits of it. And so because this is the country's goals, the country's economic intentions for raising its ability to rule in the global market, that should give us all pause. I tell my husband, because we're big Amazon Prime users, try to make sure it doesn't come from China. And I'm not trying to be anti-Chinese, but I am anti-China. Buy American if you're looking for things that you can do. Just things like that, it all adds up. And so if you work with federal or Department of Defense and there's controlled unclassified information, or, oh goodness, classified information, it is imperative that we protect this information and data, to not make it any easier for intelligence about us to get into Chinese hands. Now, we talk about TikTok, we talk about chips. Samsung, yesterday, there was an announcement that an ex-executive from Samsung, we're talking South Korea, largest electronics technology manufacturer, and they make chips, microchips. And with this AI revolution, everyone's clamoring for more and more computing power. And so chips is the future. And yesterday, the South Koreans indicted a former executive who stole blueprints from a Samsung microchip factory and trade secrets to try and recreate a copycat chip factory in China. I mean, I can't make this stuff up. They're incentivizing people to steal secrets. They're trying to get any advantage that they can. Earlier this year in February, a quote unquote Chinese fishing vessel accidentally cut one of the undersea internet cables between a set of islands in Taiwan. And then a couple of weeks, and said it was an accident. And then a couple of weeks later, cut the other one, effectively cutting off all internet communications between those islands and the country of Taiwan. Now, was it an accident, or are they practicing for when they really want to cut off Taiwan? This is the kind of stuff that we need to bear in mind when we think about, is it really just two world powers vying for dominance, or is it something a little more serious? The seas, the areas surrounding the South China Sea does not all belong to China. The Philippines, there's other countries that have claims to that area, and yet China is continuing to build out those islands. They've got a forward air base down there, and they do now have blue water Navy capabilities. So it's just, if you've been watching it over time, it's kind of hard to see it day in, day out. But if you're able to look back over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and we're now seeing the impacts of it, it does give you, it does give you pause and leads me to what keeps me up at night. And it's deep fakes, it's what China's trying to do in the world. It's how they're getting their tendrils out into everything, how they're trying to steal chip technology, how they're spying over the Marianas Trench where the undersea cables are. Nothing that they're doing, excuse me, gives me the impression that they have benevolent ideas in mind. I think everything that they're doing, and their leader is pretty diehard, very, very diehard for the party. And I don't know, I just think that if we're not careful, we could end up giving away much more than we should.
Katie, this is Dan. Let me inject my own chat question. Recent news, the balloons flying over the United States. What's your take on that?
Those were spy balloons, in my opinion. They call them weather balloons. And, you know, the fact that once they were cleared away from populated areas, we shot them down, I think that kind of tells you how we view them. It's obvious they were surveilling us. They had no right to come into our airspace and do that. And I view that as very unprofessional. I don't want to say that it's something more aggressive because I'm not, you know, a political expert either, but I just believe that if we were to do the same thing to them, they would have reacted equally as, you know, affronted. Like, how dare you? What are you doing here? So yeah, the fact that we shot them down tells me that, at least from the national security perspective, we're viewing them as a national security threat. And so we shot them down. And we collected the debris so we could study it. Not, you know, we did exactly to them what they did to us when we lost our E2 over in China. They did not return anything. And so we did the same thing.
Thank you.
Mhm. So with AI and the ability now for deep fakes, what I worry about is whether or not we're going to be able to believe our own eyes and ears. I don't know if you guys saw the deep fake of the Pope in the Balenciaga puffer jacket, but that kind of set the internet abuzz. And then there was a deep fake that showed the Pentagon in flames. And that was just 2 weeks ago, I believe. And it had an effect on the stock market. Stocks dipped when that went out until it was, you know, made everyone aware that it was a fake. And so the thing that's troubling is more than half of people that were surveyed say they think they can tell a deep fake from an original. And I don't think we're any different. We probably think that we could spot deep fakes too. But the truth of the matter is we can't. Especially when it comes to moving images in videos, it's even harder to detect. And what I worry about is bad people taking the ability to create deep fakes and doing really bad things. There's already been reports of sextortion and revenge porn using deep fakes. So it's not even a sex tape that, you know, someone stole your private property. It's completely fictionalized and made up with your image, and they're blackmailing people. So it's not surprising how quickly things can get dark when it comes to technology and things like AI and deepfakes. So all of it rolled up into one does have kind of a common thread with China's assertions for power, and it's everything that it's doing to raise itself in the world. It's shameless goal of stealing intellectual property, of dumbing us down in the Western areas. You know, I mentioned that another author called TikTok a weapon of mass distraction. I really love that analogy because that author, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's name. I'll try and look it up afterwards and send it to you, Dan, so you can push it out. But that author likened it to when, if we think about Chinese history, there was a period in time where the West and the Silk Road, and we pushed opium over to them. And to them, they call it the lost 100 years or lost generation or two, where they had to deal with opium addiction. And this author is saying, with this TikTok weapon of mass distraction, it's now digital opiates that China is pushing to the West to dumb us down and try and knock out a couple of our generations. And it might sound like hyperbole as I'm saying it, but I believe it. I wouldn't put it past them. When we think about Eastern philosophy, Sun Tzu and the way of war, the art of war, to defeat us without raising a sword, without even fighting, that's the ultimate goal. And if they can beat us by feeding us TikTok, why wouldn't they? So with that, that's all I had prepared to speak about. A lot of it was kind of ad hoc and from the hip. I'm sorry about not having a whole, script to talk about, but I am interested in hearing if anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Katie. This is Dan. It didn't, your presentation didn't go down the path of normal cyber security discussion, jargon, et cetera, and that's a good thing. I mean, you brought up some very, very thought-provoking points. I was over here shaking my head while you were talking, because, well, I haven't thought of that. I haven't thought of that. But I mean, this is just the beginning of this thing. This thing, I mean, talk about artificial reality. How do you even make decisions in a world like that, where you have to go through an analysis phase, like you would normally, like those that do to make sure that it's accurate information. Anybody else got any thoughts on that? It's scary. There's a question inserted from Sherilyn Graybill. What is the best way to protect our personal electronic devices? What is one key advice you could give us?
So my recommendation would be to get a hardware security token. It's several manufacturers make these security tokens. I might be able to show you one. I happen to use one called YubiKey. It looks like this. And you see it's a USB-C device that I can plug in. It's also NFC, this little silver or gold part, and it can be read by my iPhone. And what I use with this hardware security token is my second factor for authentication. So the one thing that you can do to protect your devices that I highly recommend is to get a hardware security token like a YubiKey. And that way it's username, password, and put your key in the thing or put it next to your phone and then type in your YubiKey PIN. So it takes that second factor away from something to something you have. And now, if you guys are familiar with Defense Department, the Common Access Card, something you have, this is just allowing us to do this in our private lives. And I use it for logging into Google, Microsoft, all my stuff. LinkedIn allows it. More and more apps are allowing you to choose a hardware security token as your second factor. I would recommend that.
Does that apply to, phones, PCs, tablets, everything?
Yes. Especially if you get one that has two inputs. One is a USB-C, and also an NFC connection. So you can use it on your phone and tablet.
Very good. Sherilyn, did that answer the second part of your chat? So multi-function authentication is the best way. Are you satisfied with that answer? Yes. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the crowd?
I just wanted to add, it's phish resistant multi-factor authentication. So phishing is kind of the easiest way that they get us. They send us these fake emails or fake SMS messages, and we click on it and boom, we're hacked. Well, these hardware tokens make it very difficult for them to fake, to get us via phishing. I don't exactly understand how the technology works, but it is phish resistant multi-factor authentication.
Are these items things that you can buy from Amazon, Best Buy, any
Yes,
big box or online?
yes, readily available, or you can get them straight from UV-Co. That's the most popular brand or the front runner that's out there, but folks that have been around with, you know, the RSA security tokens, it's kind of the same as that. It's a, you know, time-bound one-time password, and it's pretty much the more secure way to authenticate.
Is this something that you have to purchase one per device? I would imagine so.
No, but you should purchase two so you have a backup one, because if you forget or lose the first one, you're going to be SOL. It will be bricked. So you definitely want to have a backup and register both. But you can use that one key, like that my main key. I use it for all my devices, including my Apple iPhone. And you can choose to use it for authenticating into Windows or just authenticating into third-party apps. You can manage and monitor all of that.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I know what I'm doing as soon as this session is over. That was good information.
I'm glad to help. I really am. Biometrics.
There you go.
So biometrics are better than, so here's the thing to remember about multi-factor authentication, because all the factors are like something you know, something you have, something you are, some place you are, some way you do things, how you type your password. There's all different types of biometrics, or sorry, factors. Biometrics becomes just another factor that is difficult to fake, and so it's incrementally better than username, password, two things you know. That's two things, but it's single factor. They're both things you know. So in order for it to be multi or two factor, you've got to take a factor from one of the other groups, something you have, someone you are. So biometrics is definitely a good way to get another factor into your authentication. Be careful too, though, with all your eye scans and retina scans. Me personally, I went to Lens Crafters last year. My husband went first, and so I had time to sit there and look at their technology and pull up their privacy policy and read about their retinal scan, and come to find that Lens Crafters is using Optiv, and Optiv is owned by Nikon, and Nikon's headquartered in Europe. And so where's my retina scans going to be housed? When they couldn't really answer me, I skipped the retina scan. So, you know, I'm not saying everybody's like me, but know what they're going to be doing with your data and where your data is going to be. When I tried to talk to the person that was there on the site, they didn't know anything about biometrics, and was like, what's the big deal? It's not like they can identify you anyway. Absolutely they can. So yes.
So this is I mean, it's always has been, it will continue to be a changing world, but I mean, the challenges are, I guess it's based on your perspective, but so much better. To your point about phishing earlier, the amount of phishing traffic that I personally see is through the roof. And some of these emails are identical, identical to what you to what you may see from the original organization. It's just crazy. So, hacking occurs all the time. I mean, people just have to be on their guard. What else can you see beyond something like this?
What you have to do now is ask yourself whether this was a solicited communication or unsolicited, because it might look like your legit insurance company contacting you with some urgent request. But if it's unsolicited, I would urge you to be proactive and reach out to them and ask them, did you just contact me? That's just the way it's evolving. With the deep fakes, with the chat GPT, phishing emails don't have the spelling errors anymore. It's not as easy to determine by looking, and we're not going to be able to believe our eyes anyway. So really it's starting to come down to, is this an unsolicited communique? Because if it is, I need to validate that this is legit.
Your recent point was tremendous. It's so in the old days, what's the old days, a year ago, whatever. I mean, you could read an email and you could see a typo or a phrase or whatever, and right away, okay, that's a fish. And but to your point about a chat GPS specifically, the large language, it's like, well, you're absolutely right. They can apply that technology to quote unquote perfect what it is that they send out and make it more readily acceptable by the person, by the individual. That's crazy.
Super tricky.
It is super tricky.
Yes.
Wow. Alan Hagerman, you poked around with Chat GPS and I mean, obviously there's other opportunities for it as well.
I'm on the decidedly negative outlook with AI and humanity. I mean, I've seen that movie and it doesn't end well for us. That said, I use ChatGPT daily now in my workflows. I use it, to help develop code, and it makes a lot of trivial stuff way less trivial now. Even you can just ask it, hey, give me some code that does this, and it does. You still have to finesse it a little bit, but it's definitely a time multiplier for people, and I think as we get it into our workflows, it's just going to become more so. I do, however, also worry about giving information to the AI. So for example, it's really easy to copy and paste data into Chat GPT and just say, hey, visualize this for me, and get back these really pretty graphs that you can, copy and paste into your PowerPoint or something. But, I also don't need Chat GPT or any of the other LLMs, updating their model using my data that I just needed it to analyze. So, that's a concern as well. Using the AI is great, but you also have to concern about what you're giving the AI that you're allowing it to work on.
Absolutely. It's called OpenAI. That's the name of the company. They are completely open. So do not put sensitive information in the large language models. Just don't do it. Don't put any of your personal information or company sensitive organization. Try to sanitize all of it and genericize it so that you can get those time savings, but you're not giving up any of your critical information. Arthur Raymond made a good point in chat. It's cyber hygiene and taking care of the basics. Okay, Chat GPT. So it's chat.open.ai, I believe, or openai.com. And learning about using it. Wow, there's a lot of sources out there now. Everybody's kind of rushing to the bandwagon. I found that the best information I got about how to use ChatGPT was from this AI marketing group that I found on LinkedIn. But once you learn the tips and tricks for ChatGPT, that's it. You just need to learn them once and then you can use them. And basically, the trick for prompting ChatGPT is to tell it what kind of expert to act like. So, for example, let's say you wanted to put up a LinkedIn post, tell them to act as a expert media marketer or act as a senior software developer. You tell the large language model, this is who you are. And then you give it parameters for what you want it to do. Prepare a LinkedIn post for me with 5 hashtags, make it visually appealing, use icons, write like a human, don't plagiarize. Go. And it will do it for you. So it's just like many of the other tools that we have, garbage in, garbage out. The better your prompt, the better the output. And what I've been learning using ChatGPT is, and I'm using the paid version, but it saves your conversations. And so it's designed for you to go back regularly because it will remember. It will rescan everything that you talked about previously and will continue to learn and refine its outputs. And so the more you use it, the better it becomes.
So the more people get on board with this, and I think you mentioned this earlier, the higher the demand on computing power and chip manufacturing, et cetera. What relationship do they have there, if any, that they forecast what the demand might be and inject that into the modeling for chip manufacturing and computing power?
What I know is it takes immense amounts of computing power to power those large language models. NVIDIA graphics processing units, it seems that GPUs more than CPUs are what's needed to power AI and what we're doing now and in the future. So you guys might have seen this last week when NVIDIA was valued at $1 trillion or over $1 trillion, first $1 trillion tech company in history. Yeah, it's graphical processing units. Believe it or not, it's the video game industry that has led this revolution and evolution for computing. Massive multi-online player games needed all that computing power and graphics power for the worlds that the video games were creating. And that's where AI, that is the same thing, same chips. And that's why there's a chip war going on right now. The US just sanctioned China by targeting Western investments in Chinese companies that are working on AI, quantum, and chip manufacturing. So we're trying to hinder China's ability to produce chips, advance in AI and quantum. And so we're saying don't invest in companies there in China, and Japan, Netherlands, and several of our allies are following suit. So it's a full-on tech war. We're battling for the undersea cables, we're battling for the microchips, we're battling for the know-how.
That's crazy. Alan put in a comment, YouTube has a ton of videos on using ChatGPT and what it is. So FYI sake. So it's good review material. So we are at 1 o'clock. Any final questions from the crowd? Hearing none, I want to say, Katie, thank you very much. I personally learned a great deal on a very, very hot topic. So this was rightly named, and you've provided some great content and opportunity for us to learn more about this new technology that it continues to change the world. Technology always has and will continue to do so. So thank you again. Thank you to all of our participants. Thank you to G2Ops, and thank you, Katie, for your knowledge and expertise. So I will, if Katie, if I may ask you to send out your presentation to me, and I will post the recording and the presentation to our site. We are in the midst of well, potentially migrating sites from HRIC to Innovate Hampton Roads. So just be patient with us, but we'll get it there within short order. So once again, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.